What's up, Savages? Welcome to the Savage Syndicate podcast, where I inspire the average person how to become hard to kill. Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially. Each one of my guests is going to help you become hard to kill in one of those aspects. So sit back, enjoy, subscribe, share, and stay safe, stay savage, stay hard to kill. Savage Syndicate. Today's guest is Mark Turner. I'm just going to read what is your Instagram profile or your bio. Scotsman in USA, former U.S. Marine, co-founder of the Overwatch Foundation, third-degree black belt in BJJ, six-time national champ. Now, thank you for coming on, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
There's, like we were talking about a little bit before, there's so many things that I like and I'm interested in, military, jiu-jitsu, surfing. Reading that little bio right there, I'm like, man, I want to talk about the Overwatch Foundation, right? That's obviously a big talking point. But then jiu-jitsu, I'm like, well, I could probably do about 3 hours just to jiu-jitsu. So I'll start with jiu-jitsu and then we'll roll into the other stuff. So tell us a little bit about your journey of becoming a black belt.
Yeah, so I wrestled in high school here in America and was doing pretty well. I was okay. And I found again, this was back 1997, and there was a guy who was training 1997 version of jiu-jitsu, and I thought it was karate. And he said, "Do you want to, spar a little bit and stuff?" And I was like, okay. And so I took him down, and I'm holding him down. Next thing you know, he's arm barring me and triangling me, and this was back, the UFC started in 93, so this is just a few years later. And, at that point, I had never even seen the UFC 1 or 2, and I think 3 was at that time as well, but I had never seen it. And I just was like, what in the world is this? And started training jiu-jitsu back then as a teenager. I was like 17 years old, and it was like I said, very rudimentary jiu-jitsu back then. There was only a couple of places that you could train. And I just kind of fell in love with it and started training and really trained a lot. Like every day I was training, and at night we'd roll around on carpet with our gis on. I mean, it didn't matter. I was just totally wanted to absorb myself in jiu-jitsu. And then, through different things, I ended up meeting Damian Maya, and Damian, this was like 2005, end of 2005. I met Damian, and Damian's an interesting person. He kind of has interests in many different things. He likes history, he likes nature, he likes all this kind of stuff. And so we were connecting over the military stuff. He was asking me a lot of stuff like that. I was a blue belt at that time, and we just kind of became friends. And then for the next year, like 2006, there was a bunch of problems on the team I was training at the time. Not really problems with me, but just the team wasn't really a good place to train. It wasn't and I was spending 6 days a week training, and I would always complain to Damian and say, I'm there all day, kind of a couple of times a day, training every day, and it's just a pain in the backside. This guy's mad at this guy, and
I call it jiu-jitsu politics.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And he said, well, I'm going to start coming to the States a lot more. And because this was before he won Abu Dhabi, this was before he had even competed at the Pans in the States or anything like that. And he goes, before the UFC and all this, and he goes, I'm going to be coming to the States a lot more. Why don't, we're friends. Why don't I just be your coach? And I said, okay, let's do it, and then so he became my coach then, and I got the purple, brown, black belt from him, and I was his first non-Brazilian black belt that he ever graduated to black belt. So, and then I was with him at a bunch of the different UFCs, cornering him there, helping him in fight camps and all that kind of stuff. So, and he's had an incredible career, not only in jiu-jitsu, but ADCC and the UFC as well. So, and even still now it's continuing. He's basically one of the commentators on the Brazilian broadcast of the UFC.
Does he have schools all over the place? Because I think you're based out of Chicago, right, or Illinois?
Yes, yeah. There's a couple. The association's really small right now that he has. My academy is really large. We have close to 400 students. And we've really built it into something really cool. But there's a couple little affiliate academies that he's had. But now that he's retired from fighting, he's looking at putting a lot of time and effort into kind of building the team in the States, and we'll just kind of see where that goes. He obviously couldn't put a ton of attention and focus into it when he was fighting, because at the level he was in the UFC, it's all consuming.
Yeah. And I think he's vegan too, right?
Vegan? No.
Oh, because there's a vegan store restaurant out here called Gratitude in Newport Beach, and I saw on the menu. My wife took me there, and there's a Damian Maya plate. It said something fancy. And I said, what Damian Maya? Like, there's not a lot of Damian Mayas. And she goes, so I talked to the owner, and he says, oh yeah, I'm good friends with Damian. He's vegan or plant based or something along the lines. And so
the owner, Jason Eisner.
I don't know who. I don't know his. I forget his name. This was years ago. But owner of Gratitude Restaurant in Newport Beach.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours. And
Okay.
actually another guy who got his black belt from Damien, and I think he just put that on the menu. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, yeah. I thought, because when you're not thinking about jujitsu or and you're just like at a restaurant with your wife, I'm like, well, wait, this is weird. Why does he have a plate named after him? Yeah. So
Yeah,
that was cool.
yeah. I've been there as well. That's a good place.
Yeah, yeah, and people always like, oh, I don't want to go to a vegan restaurant, because we were vegan for a little bit, then plant based, and then we took some friends there and like, we want to have vegan, we want a steak or whatever. I said, go there, you'll love it. Nobody's ever complained. They go back. It's a great restaurant. I think there's one in
Well,
LA too, right?
the same guy has Wolfie's, let me get the name right. Wolfie's Hot Chicken, I think it's called, and it's totally vegan. It's chicken sandwiches, like spicy chicken sandwiches, but it's all vegan, and I think it's in Highland Park, I want to say.
Yeah.
And it's taken off. It's a massive place. So if you're ever in that area, grab that as well. Wolfie's Hot Chicken.
Wolfie's. I will definitely go there. That sounds rad. So you said you have about 400 students at your school. I'm assuming a lot of them are kids too, right? For the kids program.
Yeah, it's about half and half. I started the academy with 5 people. What happened was I was training. I was a purple belt at the time, and I was working out at a gym, and I had a t-shirt on. And some guy comes over. He goes, "Do you train jiu-jitsu?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Okay, well, you teach me and my friends." I said, "Absolutely not." And I was focused on myself training and all this. So I talked to Damien, and I said, "There's some guys asked me to teach them, and he said, well, why not? You should." And he said this, it's kind of funny. I've never really made fun of Damien for saying this, but it is kind of funny that he said this. He goes, "You could be the only chance that they get to train jiu-jitsu." Now, this was a bunch of years ago. I mean, I've been a black belt for 12 years. So I was a purple belt then. There wasn't, the jiu-jitsu was growing, but it's not like now where there's jiu-jitsu everywhere. But he said, "Yeah, maybe will be their only chance to train." So I started training this little group of guys. It was a group of friends. They just wanted to get into training. And then the academy just kind of started from that. And now it's much different. I mean, we have 2 massive mats. It's a huge building, and we have a lot going on. I think that we have 11 black belts at the academy now, and bunch of kids. The kids program is absolutely fantastic. Women's program, we do a bunch of self-defense stuff and all that. It's unbelievable. I go in there some days and I go, I don't know that person, or who I have to ask somebody, what's that guy's name? Because there's so many new people and just so many people. It really is an amazing kind of community that we have there. And it's not me. It's not like I've done it. I've had a lot of help. I have an amazing team there with my business partner, and just kind of all the other instructors and assistant instructors and facility people that just kind of have the place, running really, really well oiled. And it's just a fantastic little community that we have. It's great.
Awesome. How important do you think it is, like those 4 guys or however many it was that reached out to you in the beginning? how important do you think? Because my thing is hard to kill. I wrote the book. I think the average person, the goal is to inspire the average person to become hard to kill, right? And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have it in me. I'm not a ex this or a military or this or that. I said, all you got to do is walk in the first time to jiu-jitsu or is it Muay Thai or whatever it is, the first time to get in there. And then it's a game changer for most people. There's two routes they can go. They can either get their ass kicked and realize they're not the toughest guy on the street and then go away and go somewhere where they are the toughest. Or like it sounds like you, very similar to me, I got tied up like a pretzel. I was 6'2", 225. I thought I was the shit. And I got humbled really quickly and I just absorbed it. And I went every day after that. How important do you think it is to people, the average person, to get in there and start training? Like, just to be hard to kill or not be a victim of all this craziness that's going on.
Yeah, I think now as well, we obviously know that jiu-jitsu is incredibly effective for self-defense. We know it's incredibly effective for fitness, all of that kind of stuff. We know it's effective for stimulating your mind and mind-muscle connection and using and thinking about strategy that comes along with jiu-jitsu. It's really good for us as people in general. And nowadays, I think, yes, we are in a place where you need to know self-defense and you need your family to know self-defense. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, number one, it's very hard to say this because it's easy to learn, but it's also very difficult to learn, right? And I think Roger Gracie said, jiu-jitsu is easy, you just have to do it right. And that's true. It's just the doing it right is the difficult part. And I think when you first come in, and probably even before you come into any academy, when you're trying to make the decision on if you want to go and try it, you learn a little bit about yourself, because when you come into an academy, I don't care how big, how strong, how fast, how athletic, whatever it is, your background, you are not going to be good at this and you're going to struggle. And there'll be a 125-pound female that can tie you up and take all of the air out of your lungs and can kill you, right? And that sometimes is too much for people it's too much for their ego. And number one, if you can come in, realize that you're not going to be good at this for a while, realize that you need to develop a plan to get good at it. You need to follow the examples that are in the academy ahead of you and plug yourself in. You're really going to get something out of it. And it just kind of shows the kind of person that you are. If you come in that first day and you go, look, I couldn't dominate. I felt uncomfortable. This is not for me. I think you kind of learn something about yourself there too, right? It's not that jiu-jitsu is not for you. It's that you're not for you. You're not willing to put yourself out there and try something that across many different aspects of life can better you as a person. And you're just going to run away from it. And you have your reasons, but I'm one of those cheesy people that says jiu-jitsu is for everybody and that everybody can get something out of jiu-jitsu, right? That's men, women, kids, not confident person, skinny people, big people, it doesn't matter who you are, you definitely can get something out of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Do you know who Tom DeBlas is?
Oh yeah.
I love what he's doing, where he's taking these victims who are, not confident, they're getting bullied. And then I love seeing he reaches out to them, and then like 6 months later, that kid's just like, you can see the confidence, you can see everything that's changed in their life because they started training. And I love that. I try to give people as much as I can, because I'm on a lot of podcasts talking about the book, talking about trying to get people to train. And so many people reach out to me afterwards and said, wow, I really like your message. How do I get started? And I say, well, where are you at? And I Google their info, Google where they're at and say, look, I'm not making any money on this, but go here. It'll change your life. Like you were saying, it doesn't matter if you're, what do they call them? Nerd assassins. Like if you're a book
Right.
or a computer guy 12 hours a day, and then you go and tie and kill people. There's something for everybody in jiu-jitsu. And I 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that kind of stuff with the kids in our academy as well. It's so amazing. And look, here's the other part of it is I think, I grew up, I was young in the 80s, right? And in the 80s and the 90s, I was born in 82, so late 80s, early 90s. And it was all kind of karate and kung fu type movies and all this kind of stuff. And even if you went to your local karate place, whether it was here or in Scotland, you weren't learning that. You weren't learning what you saw in the movies, kind
Mhm.
of thing. And to be that guy in the movie, regardless of whatever actor it was or whatever character it was, seemed very out of reach and seemed very almost mystical to be able to have that ability because it wasn't real, right? It's a movie, it's a choreographed fight, and I'll say something that most people are going to say is sacrilegious, but you have to remember Bruce Lee, yes, he was an amazing martial artist, but he wasn't a fighter. He
Mhm.
wasn't a fighter, right? He was a martial artist and he was an actor,
Yeah.
and people thought he was the most dangerous man on the planet, and he was not a fighter. And that's fine. He doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
And this whole karate thing seemed very, I can never be that. But when it comes to jujitsu, you can, right? And in jujitsu, you can train with the Bruce Lees of today in the academy. You can train with multiple time world champion. You can train with the stars of our sport and of our art in the same training room as them. Which you can't go play basketball with, LeBron James, or you can't go, play football with Patrick Mahomes and all this kind of. You can't do it, right? So you have these jiu-jitsu, because it's still young and it's growing, and just because of how dynamic it is, it's an amazing opportunity for people to get in and learn self-defense, real self-defense. And it's everywhere now. It's absolutely everywhere. If you told me where you live, we can find a place for that person to train, and for people not to take advantage of that in this day and age is crazy to me.
Yeah, especially with all the violence and the random acts of violence happening to, I just saw that guy in New York waiting at a bus stop with his girlfriend
Oh,
and get stabbed. And it's like, okay, there's things you could have done, and I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. And that's one of the inspirations for that book, was to like get the average person to not like, because I know people being part of the surf community that are scared to go to certain travel to surf destinations because it might be a little shady. And I said, well, I don't ever want to feel like I can't go anywhere because I'm scared. I've always been into fighting. I got into it much like you did in the 90s. So I've always, back in the day, I was doing it to compete. Now I just want to protect my family walking anywhere. And we go to Cabo, Mexico, and we go off the grid. And if I'm ever scared, I can't go there because I don't want to be confronted. That's just gut wrenching to me. So I think, yeah, it's important that everybody goes out there and learns. But like you said, like with karate and taekwondo, I don't really push people to that because it's more of a point system. Like you might, haha, okay, you got 2 points. I know jujitsu and competing, there's point system, but I met some kids that are friends of my kids, and he says, "Oh, I'm a black belt in taekwondo." I go, "Wow, that's really impressive. What would you do with this?" "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm attacking you." "No, no, no, we don't do that." I said, "Well, how do you get promoted if you don't spar and you don't roll?" And he goes, "We go in front of the mirror and we do our." I'm like, "Oh, that's so not valuable. You need to learn, like with jujitsu, we're on that mat, we're getting uncomfortable. What I love about jujitsu is you get your ass beat, you get up, high five, and do the exact same thing again. You might be the hammer or the nail, but either way,
right.
you're feeling uncomfortableness and what it's like to be. I mean, not just the other day, I was in a position, my nose was almost snapping. I'm like, I got to get out of this position. But most people don't put themselves in that position. I'd rather find out, how hard and what my bones can do and not do in the mat every day than go out on the street and have somebody hit me and be like, oh, I don't like to get hit. I've never been hit before.
Yeah, it's a couple of different things. Like for the kids, we see this a lot, and I've done this multiple times where, kids are kids. They haven't learned a lot yet. They're in the class. We let the kids spar to different levels and stuff. And you can see if a kid is stuck on bottom, let's say in side control, right? Someone's on top of them, pinning them to the mat. You can see them like looking for someone to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And my academy, and I actually learned this principle. Every time I talk about this, I give the guy credit. Sean Bourmet, who is the head coach at the University of Michigan in the wrestling program, and he's an incredible collegiate wrestler. He's been coach of Team USA at the Olympics, and he's the head coach there now at Michigan. My academy used to be inside his wrestling academy before he got the job at Michigan. So, and he would always, it was a factory. It was called Overtime Wrestling. It was a factory. If you sent your kids there and you could get your kids into his academy, they were getting a college scholarship to like a D1 university. It was incredible. And he never allowed the parents to watch the training of the kids. And I kind of was like, and I learned a lot from him before I branched out on my own and had my own building and my own kind of stuff. And he said, when you get your own place, don't let the parents in. And at first, when I did venture out, I said, you know, I want to kind of have the parents in the room watching the kids. I want to see them. I want the parents to see their kids progress, and I want to connect with the parents. Right, the parents are the ones that keep the kids in the academy. I want to have some kind of connection to the parents. But he definitely had a great thing there. It was a great piece of advice. In my academy now, we do not let the parents in there for a bunch of different reasons, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
But you can see when those kids get stuck, they're looking around for help, because most of their lives to that point, regardless of what age they are, when they need help, they go to an adult. And you know, I just tell them, I say, look, you need to get out from under there. Nobody's going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I tell them that. And you see them looking at me with gerbil-eyed, like, oh geez, like I'm gonna die down here, you know. And sometimes jiu-jitsu does feel like that. But and so that translates to the adults, and I'm sure you see this. People in general, like in the world, and especially today's world, are not very good at making decisions. Most people make decisions and they judge that decision based on the outcome, right? So regardless of anything else, if it worked out good for them, or what they consider good for them, they say that was a good decision. And if it worked out bad for them, they say that was a bad decision. But there's no process to how they're actually making that decision. And you could say, well, we make decisions every day. We decide what shirt we're going to wear, what, you know, which route we're going to take to work, or if we're going to stop and get a coffee or whatever. But those aren't really decisions, right? Those aren't life or death decisions, obviously. And they're not decisions that can actually shape your life or be pivotal in your life, or any kind of crossroad type decision. So in general, people don't have that. In jiu-jitsu, we make the equivalent to those kind of like life-changing, very important life or death type decisions all the time, right? Like, how many decisions do you make like that in a 5-minute sparring session? And then how many sparring sessions do you have during a training session? And how many weeks are you training? Days a week are you training? People who train jiu-jitsu and are really kind of into it, once they've kind of learned and they're dangerous enough at a cocktail party to know what they're doing and have some kind of strategy going on, those people make exponentially more decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis than most of the entire human population. And I think that's a very valuable skill that you take off the mat and you bring that to your family, you bring that to your job, it's really is important. Like, most of the stuff that you benefit from jiu-jitsu doesn't happen on the mat, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. How do you take that? Because I know you competed as well. And I like that. I like how you say the things that you learn on the mat, you can apply to any aspect of your life. So what is that? What has competition done for you in that aspect?
Yeah, so when I was younger in jiu-jitsu, we'll say, I kind of did the path, and I'm not saying, you know, any way how people compete or if they don't compete or not is good or bad. It's totally up to that individual. But I kind of took the path of, I'm going to put a point on the calendar and I'm going to train for that competition and put some kind of camp together, or it's a thing, right? It's this goal that I have, and I'm going to climb the mountain until that day, and then I'm going to compete. And maybe I do that once or twice a year. And that was kind of how I competed. And for me, and I mean, I could say probably for a lot of people, jiu-jitsu is not really set up like that. Like, for instance, I think bodybuilding competitions are better for that kind of thing. Like, if you take Mr. Olympia, right? Some of these star bodybuilders, they'll only do the Mr. Olympia, or they'll do one other competition because they need to qualify. And obviously their training, their diet, their weight cut, everything they're doing is to peak for that one day, right? The problem is, though, you can get it wrong and you can peak and still maybe not perform the way you want on that day. And so for jiu-jitsu, you're not really able to quantify your training. The way we train in jiu-jitsu, you can't really quantify, in my opinion, your training, your development, even on a competition level. with a competition schedule like that. So this was maybe 2018, I decided I was going to compete a lot. Now, I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, but I was going to do a lot of competitions. In 52 weeks, I was on the road. I did 42 jiu-jitsu competitions in 52 weeks. Um, I was on the road. Like my schedule was basically I would train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I would take Thursday off. I would travel on Friday and I would compete Saturday, sometimes Saturday, Sunday. And then I'd fly back Sunday night or early Monday morning, and that would just start all over again. And that year I did 8 different countries, 42 different championships. And it was, I learned so much that year competing because, I had to have my diet right. Sometimes I cut weight. Sometimes if I was I like doing absolute divisions. So sometimes I didn't cut weight, but sometimes I purposely did cut weight. I was coming off, the reason I decided to do this was I was coming off a very, very bad bout of pneumonia. I was very, very sick. For 10 weeks, I basically was laid up with this pneumonia that I got. It was unbelievable. And coming out of that, I got with like my physical trainer and dietitian guy that we have at the academy and said, okay, let's put a program together. Let's incorporate it with competition and let's see what we can do. And I learned the most during competing that way. And I mean, don't do that. First of all, anybody listening to this who's like, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, whatever you think you're just going to, I'm going to do that 40. Don't do that. It's very
I think I pulled a
different.
muscle you just saying that. I was like, how did you hold up?
Yeah. And so much stuff. You have these little niggle injuries. You have, you have to get your diet right. You have to still be physically training and you have to get your jujitsu training in. You have to get your technical training, the travel component of it, right? Airports and how to just manage all that and hotels and how you're going to get your food. And so I learned a lot, but it was great because if I made a mistake or something happened where I was, needed to improve week to week, I could go back to the academy and make those fine tunings. And we always had guys like Damien or, Damien's coach is very close to me, Wagner Mota. He's a very good friend of mine. He's been here many, many times and he comes very often. If he was coming in that next week, I could be like, hey, this is what happened last week. Here's how I was, I could have passed better. I could have done this, or I wasn't able to do that. And to get those fine adjustments on the go like that and have a quick turnaround a few days later to go put it right back into practice. And I improved so much. And, obviously the biggest thing about competition is kind of the fear. There's a natural fear there, right? That you're going to step out. And I don't care. I've competed in stadiums where there's thousands of people, and I've competed in empty gymnasiums where people aren't there watching or anything like that. But it's very funny. You always have this feeling, say you're a blue belt and you're at some IBJJF tournament, you walk out there on the mat and you think that everybody in that arena is watching you, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't know who you are, don't care. There's a bunch of other matches going on at the same time, but students will have that kind of fear about that kind of moment. And why? Right? Like, why do I get it, you're scared, but be scared of something else, right? There's other things you could be scared of, but that's not one of them. So for some people for me to be able to take all of the experience that I had and bring it back to my students, and obviously I benefited myself from it, but I can pass all those lessons on. I do have students that compete very regularly. And I guess if you are listening to this and you think that sounds kind of cool, maybe you do one a month. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't every week, and I wouldn't be traveling. I mean, here's an example. Here's one competition that I did, or one weekend that I did. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina for the Charlotte Open on Saturday. I lost in the final there, and it was totally huge mistake. I was worried about my travel because what I did after that competition was I hopped on a plane and flew to LA and did the LA Pro on the Sunday. So I went coast to coast in one weekend and did 2 different competitions. And I remember the guy I lost to in the final was very, very good. He kind of was on the circuit as well. You see a lot of the same people, and I was worried about going against him, and my division was going a little bit late, and I'm like, how is this going to affect, I need to shower, I need to get to the airport, I can't miss this flight to LA. and I lost. I was terrible. I have no problem losing as long as I'm playing good jujitsu, right? You're gonna If you compete enough, you're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some. The consistent thing you want is that you're playing good jujitsu, right? You're not making these huge, terrible mistakes that are just outside of the box, and you're just, making an idiot out of your own jujitsu here. And I did. I made a huge mistake and got caught and got beat. And I remember the whole way, it was raining, the whole way going to the airport in North Carolina. I was like, couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm calling people when I landed in LA, couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just said, I'm gonna win this thing tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna win the whole thing. I'm sick of what happened today. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's go. And then I went out and I won the LA Pro by submission the next day. And so there was tons of lessons just from that you can learn, and that now I can pass on to students. But yeah, and I remember everyone kind of knows me in the IBJJF just because of my multiple years competing there and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff. And I remember I walked in LA on the Sunday, and people are like, you just competed yesterday in North Carolina. Why are you here? I was like, I have no idea why I'm here. Yeah, they were kind of looking at me cross-eyed, like, wait a minute, I thought you were in North Carolina yesterday. And yeah, so if you do want to up your competition to get a more kind of to squeeze more out of that grape and get some different aspects that you're not going to get just by putting one or two or three kind of pins on the calendar and building up to those days, kind of compete on a regular basis, whatever that means to you and whatever you can obviously afford. And in that kind of case, with your body and with your checkbook, once a month, once every other month, whatever it is, you will see a huge benefit compared to just putting those one or two dates on the calendar.
Yeah. Wow. Like I started out saying this, we could talk 3 hours of jiu-jitsu, but I want to give time to your Overwatch Foundation. So maybe we'll have a part two, and the jiu-jitsu. But I agree with you on jiu-jitsu. There's so many valuable lessons. It's not just two cavemen go in there and beat the shit out of each other. There's so much more to jiu-jitsu. We just scratched the surface here. So if you have any questions for myself or Mark, reach out and we'll help you start the journey, because it is a journey. There's so much to learn. My son, 10 years old, he's doing it. I think it's great for kids. Like you said, women, men, it doesn't matter how old you are, young, old, get into jiu-jitsu. So we'll leave jiu-jitsu at that. Tell us you got something else going on called the Overwatch Foundation. I could read real quick here. United States military veterans providing critical natural disaster relief and urgent humanitarian response to those in need. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved with that, because I think that's a great story.
Yeah, so that's the mission statement there. I didn't sit around. Now looking at that, it's a great idea what we do, and we do it really well, and the teams that we've built are amazing. And I wish I could take credit for like sitting down with my business partner and coming up with this idea and from a blank piece of paper to what it is today. But that's not what happened. It just kind of all happened by chance. The story's documented on Sean Ryan's show, but when the Afghan, I was in the military for a bunch of years, and then when I finished, I just kind of disconnected from the military, from veterans, and I say now I looked at it as not closing a chapter in my life and trying to open a new chapter. I looked at it like closing a book and trying to open a new book, right? I just kind of wanted to distance myself from all of that. And I don't know why. I have the same problems that many veterans have and had, and just didn't know how to deal with any of it. Maybe there was a bunch of resources at that time. I didn't really know of them. And even if they were out there right in front of my face, I probably wouldn't have cared, But then when the Afghan thing kind of happened, the Afghan pullout, I had been back kind of training and getting myself kind of spun back up to speed with a lot of different stuff that I used to do in the military and in contracting. I contracted after my time in the military as well. And when we're just reconnecting with some people and getting back into the swing of some things, and the Afghan pullout happened, and it just kind of rubbed everybody the wrong way. I never served in Afghanistan, but obviously many of my teammates and many people I know did, and it was part of the same part of the same kind of war on terror that I was involved in Iraq during my time. And the way it was done was terrible, obviously. So I was working with a group to kind of go over there and help with the pullout and help salvage what we could with what was going on. Um, and then during that time, I went to Virginia Beach and was talking with some people, and we were kind of waiting just to go. And then during that time, the hurricane came, Hurricane Ida in Louisiana, and just outside of New Orleans. And I said to a few friends, I said, "What do you think about just going down to the hurricane and like right when the hurricane happens and seeing if we can help people and see what we can do?" And they were like, "Okay, let's do it." And we had no idea what we were doing. We had no equipment. We ran to like Bass Pro Shop and just kind of put like, what do we need? We need rope. We need MREs. We need, like we're just kind of getting stuff and we headed down there. We just hopped in a truck and drove south. We didn't know where we were going or anything like that.
How many
And
were
through a
there?
couple,
Where have you?
four
Like,
guys, four
okay.
guys. And we just kind of figured we had 18 hours to plan. We had no plan. We literally drove south. We didn't know where we were going. And during that 18 hours, we found a couple of different apps that we could use and made some contacts and were able to put together something pretty decent. And we made 2 trips to that hurricane. We ended up feeding like 2,000 people and
Just on your
there,
guys, the four people, you fed that many people, or did you go and join another group, or just the four
no,
people? That's
just
amazing.
us.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We went down the first time. We took a bunch of extra fuel with us, and then it got to the point where there was no fuel for like 160 miles from where we were, like in a radius. So even though we took fuel and we were sharing as much stuff we could with people, but we knew we couldn't share fuel. And so it got to the point where it was like a D-Day for us, where it was like, look, we either get fuel today or we have to leave because we're just going to become part of the problem. We're going to get stuck. So we left and we went, the whole drive back was just kind of miserable because it was like we could still do more, but the resources kind of, jacked us up and we got all the way home. And I remember we got home at like 6 in the morning, and by noon we had a plan to go right back down. So that's when we rented like a big trailer and we stopped at a bunch of like Walmarts, basically all the way going from Chicago down to Louisiana. And we were just raiding like Vikings. We were raiding Walmarts and we were hitting credit card limits and store item limits
This is still just your own personal funding, right? This is just you guys.
yeah,
Just
we jumped in the car and we were using social media to kind of say, here's what we're doing, and people were sending us $5 here and $50 there, and so we had that, but it was kind of all on my credit card as well. And I just was hoping that people would see what we were doing and would support us, and so then we went down with all this food and we found a place where everyone was kind of congregating. It was in this huge gas station. There was no gas, but people were there desperate. We just said, hey, let's feed these people. And so we did that. And so then after that, we helped with the Afghan stuff. After the Afghans were brought to the States, we went up to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin 4 or 5 times and worked with the big army in the State Department and did some stuff up there. There was some other NGOs up there as well. We weren't anything at the time.
that was my
We
question. You're completely out. How receptive are they to your guys' help? Like, are they open
yeah,
arms
they
and like,
they
hey,
they were receptive. I mean, you mean when we went up to the military base with
well,
the
when you come
Afghans?
back and try to help with the Afghans that they brought back, are they?
Yeah, they, you, they were receptive. They kind of obviously knew our backgrounds, and just because of that whole situation. I mean, you could have whatever ego you wanted. That situation was so dire and so crazy. They needed help, right? Everybody needed help, and I learned a lot there now that I apply to what's now the Overwatch Foundation, because I saw having something as big as like, the 82nd Airborne, something as big as the State Department, and trying to all work together and trying to figure, well, probably a better way to say it is not trying to work together. But just kind of how all the politics and the different nuances of these massive organizations from top to bottom trying to get something actually done, how difficult that can be. And, we had times where we just would go and grab individuals and be like, hey, we're going to go do this right now. We're going to go, we called it the village. They had them basically in these big squad bays, but they were putting some of these Afghans, they were putting families in with single men. They were putting people with this tribe in with that tribe. And they were just messing everything up. And we just kind of went into the village and tried to sort out as much of that as possible. Cause I think they had 13,000 of them and they were trying to, it was, they didn't even teach them. Some of them had never used a toilet, never seen a toilet, and they never even explained to them what a toilet was. And you'd go into where, where they were living, and sinks would be broken off the walls because they would be standing on the sinks trying to pee and go to the bathroom in the sink because they just didn't know what a toilet was. They were washing their clothes in the toilet. And so little stuff like that, you're like, how do you miss that? Some of these people, some of them are from the cities in Afghanistan and all of this, but some of them are goat herders or this or that. And, some of them spoke perfect English. Some of them, we actually discovered that there was a woman in the camp that had run for president. I think she was the runner up for president in Afghanistan. The State Department didn't even know she was there. And it was like, she's someone you might want to know is here. Like, she was almost president of Afghanistan and she's here in this camp, she's someone you can use for organization. She's someone that you want to know is there, so there was just stuff like that. And look, everybody up there did a great job. It was a crazy situation. I mean, these people had nothing, right? They left with what they had on their backs and came here and it's not, you look at the army, it's not the army's job to babysit and facilitate a huge population of essentially third world people like that. That's not what the 82nd Airborne does at all. And so, yeah, some of those frustrations and some of those learning lessons were big. So, yeah, that went on. And at that point, when that finished, I kind of said to my business partner, I said, look, I think we can maybe do something. Like, I think we can, all I kind of said was we can continue to help people. We have enough guys to do this. We can get more guys. And we can maybe do something here. And then that's when the Ukraine war happened, and began. And even still, when I went to Ukraine the first time, we were not the Overwatch Foundation. I signed the papers to create the Overwatch Foundation when I was in Ukraine.
So with the Ukraine, the same mentality, take a bunch of people that are trained well and just go over there and help, boots on the.
Yeah, so we use only former special operations guys, just especially overseas, just because and I've taken some not flack online for this, but when people contact me and they want to get involved because they hear the stories and they want to help, and it's great. It's just when you go to some of these places like we do, whether it's Ukraine, Israel, we have some stuff that we're looking at doing in Africa. We're not going to nice places. We're going to places where you need to know what to do in all kinds of situations, and you need to be able to work in a small team. And it's not all about the warm and fuzzy. You have to, our safety and each other's safety is number one, even at the hurricanes. People get desperate day 3, day 4 after some of these catastrophic hurricanes. You have to kind of know where to be and where not to be and that kind of stuff. And so we use former special operations guys. And when Ukraine came, I had a friend who's in my academy. He's a purple belt. He hadn't been home in 11 years to Ukraine.
Is that Yuri?
Yuri, yep. And he wanted to go home and make sure his family was okay. This was very early in the war, a few days in. And I said, well, you're not going to go by yourself. You have no experience. You don't know what's going on there. I said, let me do something and we'll get you back there and bring you back here to the States and make sure everything's okay. So I asked one of my friends, hey, do you want to go? And like 18 hours later, we had the plan and we were on our way and we went over there. And when we went over there, it started off, we're just going to take Yuri there to see his family, hang out a little bit and come home. We'll try and get some medical supplies on the way and maybe we can distribute those somewhere, and make makeshift IFAKs, first aid type kits for trauma first aid kits for people. And that was it. And then when we got there, people in that town heard we were there and wanted us to help them. We were doing site assessments for the army there for their different kind of fortified locations and machine gun positions and all that kind of stuff. And then we got asked if we would help train the new basically recruited infantrymen that needed training. And we said, well, we're going to be here for another 8, 9 days. Sure, we'll help. And that kind of started our training process in Ukraine. And we've been back there 6 times now, planning another trip back there, and we've worked with their day one recruits that were civilians all the way up to their special operations guys. We've trained as much as a small unit like a platoon all the way up to battalion size units. So it's going really well there with what we're doing. We've also helped facilitate evacuations from people from the east to the west, and then either to Europe or to the States. We've relocated families to the States and helped them get set up and get their kids in school and get apartments and furniture and jobs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we do a lot on the training side in Ukraine, but we're also doing a lot on the humanitarian side as well.
That's amazing. And I heard on the Sean Ryan show when you were on there say that there's text messages, personal messages to you that's saying, hey, the things that you taught me, you and your team taught me, just saved my life today. Or I was able to put the tourniquet on that you taught me how to do. It saved my this and that. I mean, those got to
Yeah.
be great messages to receive.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, look, we get a lot of those messages, and it's great, but we get the other side too. We get a lot of messages of guys that have been killed, and that kind of stinks. And you think like, I obviously had guys die in war that were teammates and that kind of stuff, which is difficult. And you kind of think, well, yeah, you just trained these guys in Ukraine though, but so why is that such a big deal if one of them dies, right? Like some people may have that thought process, but it's like, look, I trained that guy, let's say for 2 weeks or 17 days. If I didn't train him, he wasn't getting any training, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of these guys, from the time they sign their paper that they're checking in to enlist in the army, it can be 2 weeks and they're on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no joke. I could never do that. And I've talked to tier one operators on our teams and said, guys from SEAL Team 6, guys from Delta, guys from all over the Marine Corps Special Operations and Army Special Operations. And it's like, could you imagine signing a piece of paper and in 2 weeks being on the front lines of a war? And I mean, I couldn't do it, but these guys have to do that. And it's, you see it in them. You see, like, I say this a lot. I've said this a few times publicly, like, war obviously is not a good thing. I think, it's very tough because I'm not a warmonger, but I'm proud that I was able to fight in combat. I'm proud that I was able to help guys to the left and right of me, and I'm proud that they were able to help me. And it's a weird kind of honorable thing, war, right? But it's also horrible. And if it has to happen, which God willing, there won't be another war ever anywhere. But if it has to happen, I believe it should be fought by professionals, by people who are trained, people who are fully capable, fully aware of what this thing is that they're about to go do, and then let everything fall where it may after that. But at least you're using trained professionals who are doing this, right? And in Ukraine right now, on both sides, whether it's the Ukrainian army or the Russian army, that's not happening. These are regular, everyday people that are just being handed weapons and being like, go fight. And you can see the result of that, right? It's kind of like if you took two people and had them fight. It's not going to look like a jiu-jitsu match. It's not going to, I mean, it could be absolutely brutal, right? Where if I was going to fight you, God forbid, I have no reason, like, okay, I don't want you killing me. If I can incapacitate you and hop in my car and drive away, that's kind of all I need to do, right? I'm not going to stay there and pile on. And I'm trained enough to where I probably could do that.
Mm-hmm.
If I put myself in the correct positions, I could incapacitate you to where you're not technically hurt, but that situation now is over. But this war in Ukraine is just turning into a bunch of untrained people fighting against each other, and it's a bloodbath.
Yeah. I heard you say that you're not helping the Ukrainian army because I know you get some flack here and there. You're helping that guy. Like, right, that guy. it- I heard a George Carlin thing the other day. He says, "I've given up on humanity. I like individual people that I meet, But once you put a group of people together, you lose that individuality and you become left, right, gay, trans, whatever. But once you see a person and meet an individual, you see a good, heartwarming person usually, and then that's the person that you want to help. And I thought that quote was perfect. Was like, and my kind of question to this is, you keep all the politics out, left, right, Biden, Trump, whatever. You're helping the individuals during this, and that's something I admire. Like with the hurricanes, with Ukraine, you're not going over there saying, "Hey, look at me." Over, you're not shining a big light on it. You're helping those people on the ground, individual people that are changing their lives. And I think that's, one of the huge things that I love about it.
Yeah, both of our kind of major missions right now, Ukraine and Israel, obviously have massive political like impact, right? They're very polarizing kind of events. And if you ask me about Ukraine, Ukraine's a terrible country. It's terribly corrupt. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know how anyone can argue with me on that. It's voted the second most corrupt country in Europe. The number one corrupt country is Russia. Ukraine's number two. We know about the corruption in that country for many, many years. I don't have a dog in the fight of that country. I don't care about their politics. I don't care about their government. I don't care about any of that, right? But when you're there and you see people that are now in the middle of something that I know is all too real, and you can just help them, that's what we do. To me, helping those guys learn how to fire a rifle or how to move properly and how to communicate when they have to go do that job, it's the same as handing someone a blanket or a bottle of water. You know what I mean? At any other kind of humanitarian type event. It's, to me, that's the same. Because those people had others invade their country. You
Mm-hmm.
can say they're corrupt, you could say they're this, that, and the next thing, but we've never experienced that. I mean, could you imagine right now someone invading our country, just showing up and and being aggressive towards our population? It's you can't get your head around it, right? So that happened, and now they have to go address it. But that guy is a car mechanic, or that guy owns a pizza place, or you know what I mean? And it's now you have to go do that. It's when we join the military, we have an all volunteer military. Everybody that's there knows why they're there, knows why they went there, and they've signed up for that. And these guys, it kind of wasn't they didn't have a choice. They're just stuck at it. So helping them, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, you're training for an army and you're training, and look, we don't get paid, right? There's a lot of people that think we're getting $1,200 a day when we go over there. We have a contract with the Ukrainian government and all that. We don't, and I don't want it to be that way because they'll probably get in the way, right? It's we go there, we can do what we want. We know how to stay under the radar. We know how to get things done. We have our fixers and our people that can help us get to the places and in front of the people that we need to. And that's what we do. And it's the same with Israel. But like, I obviously do have a dog in the fight in Israel. I'm Jewish by religion, and I love the country of Israel. I think that God gave that land to those people to live there, as the Bible says. I live that way. But that doesn't mean that I don't help Palestinian people in Israel as well. And for some people, they can't get their head around that, right? If you say you're pro-Israel, that must mean you're anti-Palestinian. And it's like, no, I'm anti-terrorism. So, and there's a lot of Palestinians that don't like Hamas either, right? And they're suffering under that government and under that organization and under that way of life. And we're, as much as we're trying to help the Israelis, we're also trying to help the Palestinian people in need there as well.
I think that's hard for people to wrap their head around, especially with all the division going on. You
Yes.
you pick this side, that's you ride or die with that side. And it's like, if you can have more debates, more discussions about opening up our minds and our hearts and our willingness to help, I think we'd get accomplished a lot more. How do you choose, or I know Yuri was your friend and you went to Ukraine to help him out originally. Then you had like 5 or 6 missions there. Then you went to Israel. How do you choose where you're going to focus your attention on?
Yeah, so I have we have ideas of places where obviously there's a problem, right? There needs to be a problem, and there needs to be a problem area where the current solutions are not enough. We need to go to a place where there's a problem and we can add something to the solution, let's say. I'm not saying that our solutions are better than anyone else's, or than any governments or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, can we add something to the solution? There. Can we maybe do something different? Can we add some nuance to what's already happening? Can we actually make a difference, right? If we went to a place where the solution's already in place, there's no need for us there. So those kind of criteria have to be there. And then the biggest problem we have on can we actually go do it, right? And what does that mean? That means what I've realized, and we came across this through Yuri. Yuri, we went to Ukraine. We had no plan of doing what we do in Ukraine now when we first went.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it became ongoing was because during that time we met people and connected with people that could be our fixers, that could facilitate things for us, that could open doors for us, that could get us places and in front of people so that we can make a huge impact. The same thing happened in Israel. I was talking to somebody, and this was during the last kind of round of the Hamas attacks from Gaza into southern Israel. And I said, man, it would be really good to go and do something in Israel, but it's very difficult, right? They're obviously a very prideful people. It's very closed and security is very high in that country. And I don't know anyone there that could. I know people there, but I didn't know anybody there that could like open doors for us. And he said, actually, I might know somebody. And so I said, okay, pull on the thread and we'll see, right? And then that's turned into something that's been amazing, and we have an incredible relationship there with the IDF and with some special operations teams there, and with different people in Israel and they're helping us help not only Israelis, but they are helping us help Palestinians as well. There's so much going to come out when I finally tell the whole story on when I'm able to tell the whole story on what we're doing in Israel, that you're just not hearing about in the West at all. And so you need these fixers. So one of the places we're looking at doing stuff now is Africa. We do have kind of the beginnings of some relationships there to flesh some things out and actually put a project together and a mission together for some different stuff in Africa as well as South America as well. But those are in the very early stages. And what you have to do is you have to build those because you can't get anything done. You can't just show up somewhere and expect that the people in that country and that culture and wherever it is you're going, especially, these other countries, and they're just going to open the red carpet for you and roll that out and give you access to everything that you need to get something done, right? You show up and they're like, who are you and what are you doing here? And well, can I do this? No, you can't, go away, right? Like that would be the reaction. So you have to develop these relationships and have these people in place to actually open doors for you so that I can bring the team in and we can just start, hitting balls off tees,
How big is the team now? Well, you have the original 4 guys, but how big is it now?
Yeah, so we have the last trip that we did to Ukraine, there were 8 guys. And it's different guys on our roster of guys that we have screened that if the zombies came and I had to get everybody together, there's between 45 and 50 guys that have been screened and verified, and their backgrounds, their qualifications, all that kind of stuff are good to go. We haven't used anywhere near all 50 because we just don't have the money to. I wish I could have these guys in country doing stuff every day, every week, helping people, because they really are incredible. The teams we have and the way that we work, and we all train together. We all guys from all over the country, by the way, and we'll come up with a topic and we'll all meet up in a certain place and do whatever kind of training we feel we need for the next trip, or just to up our level in general, and keep our sword sharp kind of thing, and our shields shined, and so that we're ready to do stuff, and that includes everything: physical fitness to weapons to low visibility type stuff to tradecraft type stuff. Like we're really communication. We're working on all kinds of stuff to make sure we're able to go do this when the bell rings. And if the plan is to blow this thing up and have good resources coming in so that we can send teams all over the place, and the guy's skill level is amazing. I mean, obviously, you just by the type of caliber that they are and their backgrounds, you know they're capable guys. And so when they show up for this, and nobody gets paid, everybody just does this voluntarily. And I've had people say, hey, I'll come, I'm up for going on the next trip, but I need at least $600 a day. It's like, yeah, we don't even want you. If that's the first thing that pops into your head, go contract with a defense contractor and make your 600 or your $800 a day, and that's fine. Everyone needs money. We need to support our families. I'd like to get it to the point where we can, take care of the veterans too, because part of what we do at Overwatch, yes, it's helping these people in these dire circumstances, but it also helps the veterans. They get so much out of it. I get so much out of it as a veteran, getting the teams back together and working through these problems and using skills that you never thought would be relevant in the real world. Once you got done on some of these military teams, to actually help people now, it's incredible.
How are you guys funded right now? Just all private money?
Just donations. Yeah, just donations. We need to get better. We're new, right? So since 2022 is when we began. So we're just a little over a year old. I didn't know anything about running a nonprofit. I didn't know how to raise money. I've never raised money before. And we don't bring in a lot of money. We've been able to do all of this on a shoestring budget. And we have been able to bring in a couple of chunks of money from organizations so we could buy certain equipment or medical type supplies and stuff like that for people. But a lot of it is just very small donations. And when we gather up enough, we go do a mission, or I can't take it anymore, and I just put it on my personal credit card and we'll figure it out later, kind of thing. Which we need to stop doing. But it's the way I look at some of those is, especially if something pops up and there's a need and we have to go, it's like, if I don't do this and figure it out later, then we can't go do it because we don't have the money. So we're trying to work out that piece. We're trying to work out the funding piece, get some, stable donors. We're trying to build out a board to help with some of that. We're trying to look at hiring a someone who's dedicated to fundraise for us. But it's difficult because it's, you could drop us anywhere in the world and we'll figure stuff out and we'll help people, but I just don't know that side of the game. Yeah. Fundraising and all that kind of stuff. I'm more of the boots on the ground person with the team. So, but we're learning, right? We're learning. We've obviously proved the concept that we can really help a lot of people in very unorthodox ways, using very skilled people. So we've proven that. Now it's time to actually build in a sustainment side so that we can just continue to do it and get bigger and bigger and do more and more.
I'm a part of a couple of masterminds for entrepreneurs, and we had a meetup in, where were we at? Ohio last year. And Tony Bowers, came out. That's Human Travel, or the Secretary, right? The Sound of Freedom. And they were the fundraising got, I think it was about $500,000 in one night for that foundation. So that might be something that you guys could get a part of, is these big entrepreneurs who want to do fundraising for awesome groups like, Overwatch, I think would be a no-brainer. But that's not my.
Look, I think too, we've talked a lot about that as well. Obviously, I've been on a ton of different podcasts now and stuff, and I never wanted to kind of be the face of this. I thought we could do it and everybody just be gray and it would just kind of take care of itself, I guess. But yeah, at some point in very early days, I was kind of pushed out onto the diving board and was told that I had to be the guy to get out and talk about it, which, I'm passionate about it. I've been told I do a halfway decent job telling the story. So I guess it's part of the deal for me now. I know obviously I can't ever go on vacation to Russia now. Like that kind of stuff.
Thought about that, but I wasn't going to ask you about if you're getting any flight that in.
Yeah, look, I get a lot of weird phone calls from Russian and Chinese phone numbers and stuff like that. Obviously I've been on probably terrorist lists for those guys for a bunch of different, they used to have bounties on people and all that kind of stuff. And now with what we're doing in Israel, it's just I have no problem with that kind of stuff. I know how to protect myself and take care of myself. I'm a big boy. I'm okay with all of that. But yeah, getting out and speaking in front of people, that's been something we've talked about, telling the story, because there's a lot that, like you mentioned, like mastermind business type people can learn from the leadership aspect of trying to put all this together. I never was like a big mission planner in my days. A little bit of that in the contracting world, doing what I was doing, but now it's we're putting everything together from top to bottom on one of these missions, and it's not easy flying halfway across the world, and it's 18-20 hour days and not a lot of sleep, and just a lot going on, and it's been life or death. I mean, I've been on the Gaza border, I've been in the West Bank doing stuff, I've been in Eastern Europe during a major war. It's not like it's the most safest kind of thing that we're doing. I've jumped into the water in hurricanes and stuff. It's not the most safe. So we need to kind of just there's some things that we need to do on the planning phases that really relates to business and to personal development as well, that I guess I'll have to get up and see if I can do some of these speaking engagements, because here's the thing, same as like social media, it's just getting the word out, right? I believe in our story. I believe that we're really helping people. I see that we're really helping people, and I think if more people heard that, they would relate to it and they would appreciate it and they would like to be a part of it somehow. And because what we're doing, I think, is good.
Yeah. Well, I liked what you in the very beginning, you started out by saying you had help when you were driving down to the hurricane. You were on social media and people were donating $5. It's like, that's the good side of social media. I mean, obviously there's evil sides of social media, but I love that positive side of it, is where you're passionate about something, you need some help, and people are willing to step up and help that way. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Just need more of
Yeah,
that.
we'll get there. I mean, look, we'll definitely get there. We're confident that we'll figure out that puzzle, the funding piece. It hasn't happened yet, but we're working. We have a plan. We'll eventually get there, because I'd love to do this full time. I'd love to have the guys do it full time. Being able to, it's like when we're there, when you're in Ukraine in February, or you're in Israel driving around and in the dusty kind of the back areas of there, down at the Gaza border and stuff like that, you just think like, could you imagine helping people every day and doing that for a living? It's been really rewarding what we've done so far. The hurricane stuff. Oh, to see those people go from yesterday was completely normal to today, my life has changed and everything I had is just gone.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I think I saw on your social media you didn't have the funding to go to Maui.
Mhm.
The same thing. I follow a lot of surfers, and they were like, FEMA wasn't letting them drop off supplies. I know people from or live on Maui, and their trucks were getting turned away. How hard is it? I don't want to. This is going over an hour. If you're okay to keep going, we
Yeah,
can.
no, it's good. Yeah, we're okay.
Um, what are and I'm only seeing this on Instagram and social media, but is like FEMA, oh, you don't have the right paperwork to bring this truckload full of food? Because then the surfers started taking their jet skis and dropping them off at private docks, and they're saying, hey, we don't need the paperwork. We have our family who needs the pallet of water we have, we're getting it to them. Like, how frustrating is that and is it true? Like, what's the
It's true. I mean, we were at Hurricane Ian last year in the Fort Myers area, right? And we did 2 trips down there. The first trip right away, in the beginning, there's no problems. In the beginning, you can go where you want, you can do what you want, because everything's so chaotic. And we go for these hurricanes, we're there right away. And we're gonna build, we're actually revamping how we're doing stuff. We're actually creating a boat team, swift water team, and getting a boat and all this kind of stuff, like rib, like a Zodiac boat. So you can kind of go and do what you want in the beginning, but then when some of the bureaucracy comes in at all different levels of government,
Mhm.
it gets difficult. And we had a problem in Fort Myers where the big bridge that takes you to Sanibel Island. They closed that off. They weren't letting people on that bridge. They weren't letting people in certain neighborhoods. And this is so funny. I went there. There was police all over the place and different people, right? I don't know who they were, different people. And they're like, you can't go down there. Okay, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's who I am. I'm going to go down there. And they're like, no, you can't. Well, how can I? Well, you need this kind of approval. Well, how do I get that? Call this number. So you call the number. You can't get through to anybody, obviously. It's hurricanes going on. Can't get through to anybody. Finally, talk to someone. They're like, oh, yeah, I can help you with that, blah, blah, blah. You need to do this. You need to do this. They're giving you the list of instructions. I get to talk and I say, how long is this going to take? And they say 60 to 90 days. And I say 60 to 90 days. I need to be down this road in 60 to 90 seconds. And so you're like, this is not a thing, and this is not going to stop us. So we snuck on to Sanibel Island by water. we did like our own illegal landing on Sanibel Island to literally go and help the fire department there, because they had been working for over 24 hours. When by the time we showed up, and we were, it was actually Yuri helped them. We took Yuri with us. He saved these firefighters from falling off a ladder. They basically were sleepwalking, and it was unsafe. They were on a 3-story building, and just overworked, and they can't kind of get in or out. They're the department for Sanibel, right? And so but we had to like go a mile through these mangrove kind of swampy forests trying to get onto Sanibel Island, because they had all the docks blocked off. They had all the normal places that you would bring a boat. They had it all like literally blocked off. Like you would have to go out of your way to purposely block these areas off. And the only reason people would come to those areas during this kind of situation, whether it be the fires in Maui or in Hawaii or a hurricane, is people are coming there to help. And you've spent effort, money, and time to block those areas.
What's the reason behind that? Like, what do they tell you? I mean, it just seems like common sense. There's trouble. Let's go help and see what we can do.
And I will tell you this is where, like, number one, we don't take no for an answer. We'll figure it out, right? And we're very good at that. We can do all kinds of stuff. And really what I'll say is people give police and first responders sometimes a bad rap, I will say, as organizations, I think police departments are not doing a good job, right? At the administrative levels, these administrators, these kind of higher ups, they do a terrible job in police departments all over the country. Terrible. But many of the individual officers are fantastic. We in the academy, we have a bunch of police officers from various different departments, and they'll tell you, look, some of the police officers, I don't want to go to a call with them. Some of the police officers don't train. They're not physically fit. They only fire their weapon once a year when it's time to qualify again. But the other half of the officers are amazing, and they're fantastic, and they do anything for you. They do anything for your family. They care about their job. They're putting the extra time in, and they're good officers. We've been able to find some of those, especially domestically, like the stuff we do at the hurricanes. And, they kind of tell you, like, I can't let you do this, but if you went this way, or you did this, or you went to that area, or if you have a boat, or if you have this, just go that way, kind of thing. They'll nudge, wink, wink, and they'll help us because they see who we are. They know we're trying to help, and they see that we can help, and they're just standing there. They have to tell us no, but then they'll help us. So that's like a microcosm of what I mentioned earlier, where you have to build these relationships, and sometimes it takes a little while, where on a hurricane, you just kind of don't have time for that, right? You have to try and connect to a really cool gatekeeper for whatever situation that you're being blocked at, and see if they can help you turn it around so that you can get into that area and help people.
Yeah, it was awful to see for the Maui one, people jumping in the ocean. I've been to Lahaina 1,000 times, and the scene where they're jumping off to get in the water just to survive was
That's
hard.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. And I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, obviously it's so isolated there anyway, but I mean, they could have obviously done that a lot better, right? They could have responded to that a lot better. It's unbelievable, but that's kind of some of the stuff that and people said to me when I put out that call to see if we could get some funding to go there. People contacted me, "Oh, you're not going to be able to get in. You're not going to be able to do that." It's like, most of us, our job was to get into someone's house in the middle of the night and,
Yeah.
deal. Like, we can get anywhere. Don't worry. Like, I'm not worried about that piece of it, but I need to get there kind of thing in the first place. So, yeah. And look, we're not doing anything illegal. I mean, some people might say we do operate, we've done some things that's gray or whatever, but we're not doing anything illegal. We're definitely not hurting anybody or kind of putting anybody out to where they're worse off than when we leave them than how we found them. We just know, like, there's some people that need wellness checks down in this area, or they need water, or they need to get out, and we can help them. And you standing here, like, why aren't you feel like saying, why aren't you down there helping them?
Yeah.
Right? You're standing here not letting me help them. Why aren't you down there helping them?
Hmm.
It's it's a very I mean, we were told that a hurricane, and I won't mention the fire department or whatever, but the fire, we started clearing roads from like big debris uh for a fire department, because and I said, well, yeah, you guys have these massive trucks and stuff. Why aren't you just getting through there? Or why aren't you going off the road to get around and stuff? And they said, well, we can't do it. First of all, obviously, the union said not to do anything like that. Second of all, they don't want to damage their equipment, because, if they do that and something happens and that truck breaks down, now they're down a truck. And so they kind of have this thing, they have to stick to the hardball roads. But if those roads are impassable, they just can't go. And we were like, all right, well, that sounds stupid. Let us go ahead of you and clear everything so that you guys can get through. Um, and that sounds like a small thing. I mean, it was kind of terrible. It was 107 degrees, heat of the sun, and we were out there trying to clear roads of giant trees and all this kind of stuff, with very minimal equipment. Chainsaws and chains basically is what we did. We were just dragging stuff off. But it allowed those guys to get through to those areas that otherwise they were not allowed to go to. It sounds crazy, but this bureaucracy that we obviously was highlighted with the Hawaii stuff, it happens all the time in these natural disasters, and we've just been lucky and creative enough to get around some of that when we run into it.
Do you get approached afterwards, like, going to these areas when they're telling you not? Do they come at you after
Oh,
the fact?
no, nobody's kind of said anything to us. It's kind of like everybody asked me about that stuff with Ukraine and Israel as well. Like, have you ever been pulled aside? State Department ever contact you? We got on the last Ukraine trip. Now, this was our sixth trip. We had 8 guys, a bunch of SEALs, bunch of Army guys, bunch of recon Marines and snipers and stuff, and we got plucked at O'Hare Airport and they split us up. They're asking us all these questions, and guys had other flights to catch and stuff, and they didn't care. And they were asking some of the most ridiculous questions, kind of like questions you would never say yes to, even if you did it right. And it's like, not that we're big time in anybody, but it's like, you can see who we are and you can see what we do. And so it's that kind of stuff. I think at that point, I don't think they do it now, but at that point they were pulling anyone that had been to Ukraine or had a Ukraine stamp in their passport. But we fell into that. And that was the first time. It's like, look, we've been through here 5 other times. Why are you pulling us aside now? But yeah, I've never had some weird phone call or anybody come to the door and, with a suit on, about any of the overseas stuff. So
I heard about missing some gear as well. That kind of gets caught up with all the gear that you guys bring up.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we typically, we don't like to send stuff over, well, to Ukraine especially. We don't like to send stuff over because it gets stolen, right? Again, all the corruption over there, it gets stolen. So we take extra baggage and we take it with us. We carry it. And we had like $120,000 worth of IFACs in bags with us. And they lost all of the bags. They lost everything. and we got a couple of the bags back right away. And this, when you go to Ukraine, you're obviously not flying into Ukraine. You have to fly into another country and get there. And so we're at least 8 hours away from the airport now, probably more. And trying to locate these bags. We got a bunch of them, and they ended up, a couple, like $20,000 were still left, and lost. And we just were like, well, we're just gonna have to eat that. Like, it's gone. Um, we did the whole trip, 17 days. That trip was, got most of the gear back and distributed to our people and all that, and went home. And then when we were home, it was either me or Tommy, one of our medics, got a message saying that they had found the bags in some Eastern European country. And they were like, what do you want us to do with the bags? Send it here, do this, do that. I said, nothing. We'll come get it. And so we hopped back on a plane, through a little mission together, and that picking up that bag, or those two bags, turned into another training mission and stuff like that as well. We just spun it into another mission right away. But yeah, some of that stuff, again, it's learning how to do that. And I'd love to get to the point where one day we have our own way of transport. Right now we use all commercial transport, and you're subject to all of that stuff, times, and sometimes you just need to get somewhere fast, or you need to get out of somewhere fast. So in the future, God willing, if we do get enough funding, we'd like to kind of explore some ways to have our transportation be a little more nimble, as nimble as we are as well, to get us to some of these places. So yeah, it's fun learning this whole stuff and trying to do it. Obviously we're used to the military, where you have unlimited resources and whole other groups and apparatus to help you do some of this stuff, right? Like, where right now it's just a group of dudes trying to figure it out with a very limited budget, to go. And I mean, we could do a Ukraine or an Israel trip on $5,000 to $8,000. So it's not like it takes a ton of money for us to really make a big difference. It doesn't cost for us. I mean, I see some of these nonprofits bringing in millions, and I'm like, if you gave Overwatch Foundation $1 million, I could probably change the world with $1 million, like literally change the world, because we've been the first hurricane we did with $2,700.
Wow.
And that's everything. That's getting all the food we got. Because when you show up, I walked into a Walmart and I said, hey, I need pallets of water. And the lady, I said, I need to speak to a manager. I went in and I said, I need pallets of water. And she goes, oh, the cases of water are back there in aisle 2. I said, no, look, you're saying cases. I'm saying pallets. And she's kind of looking like, what? And this was in Arkansas or something. So it's hundreds of miles from, she's not thinking it's for a hurricane. And when they see you doing that kind of stuff, and we were standing there and people are looking at us with 20 different shopping carts full of stuff and pallet jacks full of stuff. And they're like, what are you guys doing? And then we tell them people are emptying their pockets and their wallets right there to help us. Walmart's giving us huge discounts. Target's giving us huge discounts. People want to be a part of a solution. People, I think, generally want to help people, especially in times of crisis. But we haven't had a ton of money to do stuff. And so we've learned how to do what we've done on a very small budget. So, one day when we do get decent funding, it's going to be incredible what we do. Like, I can't even imagine it, what we're going to be able to do. And you see some of these nonprofits bringing in a bunch of money. I'm like, how are they spending that money? Like, it's like, we actually go too overboard. And like I said, I'm usually spending a bunch of my personal credit card. We don't have a bunch of overhead. We're not paying. We don't pay ourselves. We don't have some staff. We're not the Red Cross that, 13 cents of every dollar is actually being spent on the mission because they have such a big overhead. We just don't have that. And I don't ever want to have that. I want the majority of every dollar that's brought in going to the mission. Right. So yeah, we'll get there. It's exciting to learn this whole game of the nonprofit world and fundraising and all that. Seems like the other stuff we can do in our sleep. We have incredible guys that are passionate about doing this stuff. I always think like it's going to be hard just to ask some guy who on a contracting level could get $800 to $1,200 a day to come do some of this crazy stuff with me for free.
Yeah.
And there's no shortage of guys that want to be involved and want to help. So it's cool.
That's awesome. How does the average person, like you said, I mean, this message is one to many, so hopefully we'll get a lot of people paying attention to this. How do people reach out and get involved, or donate? How can the average person help you out?
Yeah, the website would be best. There's stuff on my social media, Mark Turner BJJ on Instagram. All the links are on there. The Overwatch Foundation on Instagram has all the links to all the different stuff. And if someone wants to partner with us and kind of like really be, the donations are fantastic. That's those small donations, those like medium donations, we've lived off of those. That's what keeps us going. It's amazing. But if someone wants to kind of partner with us and really be a part of what we're doing and that kind of stuff, you can contact me directly and we can figure out what that looks like. Because that's kind of our next step too, is looking for people who are influential and who want to kind of help get the message out and want to really be a part of facilitating helping people all over the place. And we'll go anywhere, we'll do anything. We're just, we've seen that we can do it, we've proven we can do it, and we just want to keep it going, keep doing it. So yeah, that's the best way to reach out. I try to be very, very responsive on social media. So if you contact me on Instagram, I will get back to you. And if you have a special operations background, you can fill out and you're interested in working with us, you can jump on the intake form that's on the website and fill that out. If you do not have a special operations background, please, 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 please do not fill out the task force intake. Fill out the regular volunteer intake. We, at this moment, do not have a very built out mission for kind of regular civilian volunteers, but that's something that's on our horizon that we're trying to do, because we do have so many amazing people that want to help. And just because they don't have that background doesn't mean they can't help. They can't do some of the other crazier stuff, but we are going to look at building out kind of a program for people that want to donate their time and their effort, and come up with some stuff that we can include everybody into the Overwatch Foundation missions and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm very impressed with everything you're doing, from the jiu-jitsu aspect to the Overwatch Foundation. It's all very impressive. You're an amazing person, and I wish you all the luck with everything, and anything on my end that I can help you with. Just let me know. But I really appreciate your time. I know I try to keep these to 60 minutes, but we could have done another 3 hours. But I want to respect your time. So, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. I enjoyed it immensely.
no, thank you. Look, it's an honor for me to you asked me to come on. It's incredible to be able to share the story and yeah, just thanks for getting it out there.
Yeah, no worries. Well, if you guys, I'll leave links in the section here. This will be on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. I can do two different ones, one for the special ops people and one for the volunteer, or the non-special ops. That'll help you out, because it sounds like you get a lot of the wrong direction people. So I'll do what I can to help fluctuate that for you. But again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And I always end it with stay safe, stay savage, and stay hard to kill. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.